Hello and welcome back to another episode of our historic Vale of Rheidol locations series. We've finished with Aberystwyth now. We've looked at the harbour branch, we've looked at the several different stations that have been there over the years. So we'll start making our way up the line, and the first stop, unimposing as it is Llanbadarn, 5 minutes outside of Aberystwyth. This station, as uninteresting as it may look now, is one of the original stations that opened with the Vale of Rheidol in August 1902 for goods for passengers at December, and is first mentioned in 1895, which was when the notice was given that a bill would be presented to Parliament for powers to construct the Vale of Rheidol Railway. This was, in 1895, the year that the final route was decided upon. Rather than following the valley floor, it would climb up to Devil's Bridge. So in that year, we have this station named for the first time. Hard to see from where we are right here, but beyond these bushes is the main Cambrian line, the main line that goes to Machynlleth, which opened in 1864. So the first section of the railway, of the Vale of Rheidol, from Aberystwyth to Llanbadarn, is following the main line parallel. Suggestions were made, I don't think they got very far, in 1925 to convert the Vale of Rheidol to standard gauge, shut this section and form a junction right here at Llanbadarn, where the Vale of Rheidol would go its own way and the existing main line would carry on to Machynlleth. That didn't get very far. It was decided to have a station here because the main line didn't have one, village was there, and so here it was, and it was opened in a field called Cae Fulbri, which means Tomfoolery Field, which is an interesting little name. That dates back to the 1840s. I don't know what the origins of that are, but here we are in what used to be Cae Fulbri, or Tomfoolery Field. When Llanbadarn opened, it was actually more than just a halt. It was a proper station. It had a station building, waiting room and ticket office, the same style as those at Nant yr Onnen and Capel Bangor further up the line. The Nant yr Onnen one was later moved to Abfrwd. And it also had a siding, right, pretty much where I'm standing now, facing down trains. So up being towards Devil's Bridge, down being towards Aberystwyth. The siding saw relatively little use, but it did come in very handy one day about 1920 when the Festiniog Railways number 4 Palmerston was here on loan for the summer, and it broke down here, and they were able to shunt it into this siding, and poor number 3 Rheidol, the little Bagnall, had to pull a whole heavy train all the way to Devil's Bridge, which was quite dramatic, as I understand. So very little good service here really. It was mainly for the benefit of passengers wishing to join or alight the train near the village of Llanbadarn Fawr with its ancient 800-year-old church. Now generally a sort of suburb of Aberystwyth, if you like. It was a very separate, distinct village at that time. So many people would choose to join the train here or alight from here as well, depending on whether they were tourists staying in the village or people coming to church, people going to chapel from the Devil's Bridge area. When Llanbadarn became a famous part of the Vale of Rheidol, well, the first time in 1933, when the Royal Welsh Show was held in the fields here at Llanbadarn, beyond the main road. Used to be Bridge Street, a little countryside crossing. Now it's a busy A-road level crossing. And shuttle services were run from Aberystwyth station up to here in 1933 to bring people to the showground. And that all happened again, but on a larger scale in 1957, when for a whole weekend, 25,000 people were carried on the Vale of Rheidol trains between Aberystwyth and Llanbadarn. This was done in top and tail shuttle services with up to 9 carriages, engine at each end, and the Aberystwyth station limits were extended to Llanbadarn here. So basically those shuttles could move back and forwards every 12 minutes of their own free will within station limits. So 2 engines of the 3 Rheidol tanks were on each end of that shuttle, and then the 3rd engine was doing the regular trip up to Devil's Bridge and back, and that had to work around where this shuttle was faffing about down at this end. So it was a very, very interesting weekend, bringing people to that Royal Welsh Show here in 1957. However, only 3 years later, the station building here, which had survived almost untouched, was chopped in half. Would you believe it? It was chopped in half, and the waiting shelter part was completely dismantled. So that left the tiny, odd-looking little booking office quarter with the old ticket hatch now in the exterior wall. Looked very weird, just sitting here, painted black. because why not? And there it stood, very decrepit, sorry little station building, until about 1987, when it was finally knocked down. The remains were demolished and it was removed for the last time. So very close to the point when we were actually privatised, the station building, or the remains of the station building, did actually survive here. So it's a great shame that it was lost, but it was in very sorry looking condition at the time. Throughout the 1970s and 1980s, this once quiet country road became a bustling highway, and near misses and just the general danger of the level crossing became increasingly hazardous throughout that period. Finally, in 1988, British Rail agreed to automate the crossing here over Bridge Street. Ironically, this was the last year of British Rail's ownership, and they knew it, but they were still willing to do that. The adjoining mainline crossing, which is only a few yards away, already had lights, flashing lights. It was an automatic open crossing, locally monitored, and that would be upgraded to have barriers, whereas the Vale of Rheidol one would be upgraded to just have the flashing lights. It was finally commissioned on the 16th of March 1989, 2 weeks before the sale of the Vale of Rheidol to the Brecon Mountain Railway went through. So there were 2 weeks of an automatic crossing on the British Rail Vale of Rheidol Railway. And then on the 31st of March 1989, we were privatised. The crossing remains relatively the same today. It's still an automatic open crossing, locally monitored, and certainly an improvement on the rather hazardous just whistle and pray method that was used by loco crews in the 1970s and 1980s. And there we are. That is a very brief history of one of the Vale of Rheidol's most sort of forgotten halts or stations. Very, very infrequently used. Trains stop here every single time on the way up and on the way down on the other side of the crossing to activate the lights, but very, very few people use it now. So I thought it'd be nice to give it a little bit of love as one of the Vale of Rheidol's original stations. And next time we'll be carrying on up the line and looking at the next station, which is Llanbadarn, an even smaller station, would you believe it? So until then, be sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.